Thank you. Everybody have a pen? If you don't, let me know. You need a pen? This one right here. Okay, so in Genesis 1:26-28, I'm going to read it very quickly again. And when I say highlight or circle these words. And God said, let us make man, and highlight man, in our image and after our likeness, and let them, highlight them, have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl of the air, and over every creeping thing that creepeth over the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, circle or highlight him. Male and female created he them, circle and highlight them. And God blessed them, circle or highlight them. And God said unto them, circle and highlight them again, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Okay, I'm going to read it in the Voice version, which is a very simplified, straightforward version. And it reads as follows. This is God speaking. Now let us conceive a new creation, humanity, made in our image, fashioned according to our likeness, and let us grant them authority over all the earth, the fish of the sea, and the birds in the sky, the domesticated animals, and the small creeping creatures on the earth. Verse 27, God did just that. He created humanity in his image, created them male and female. Then God blessed them and gave them this directive: be fruitful and multiply, populate the earth. I make you trustees of my estate. So care for my creation and rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and over every creature that roams across the earth. So we see from these, from the beginning, God had an intention, okay? He didn't just start making stuff because he needed something to do. The Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit wasn't, sitting around saying, oh, we're tired of this. Let's do something new. We're going to make some stuff. We're going to make some animals. We're going to make some birds. We're going to make this. Well, we've done that, so now let's make some people. That was not what happened. God had an intention from the beginning, and in this is kind of where we come in and where we see what God's intention for us is and was. From the beginning, he had an intention first for humanity, then for male and female. And so in the highlighting of, in the King James Version, where we see man, is let us make man in our image, and then the thems and the hims and thems and male and females and all that good stuff. Again, note in verse 26, man can be translated as humankind. So when it says, let us make man, that could be translated as humankind. So when we talk about man, that's a generic term. It's not saying that God just made his intention first was only men. And we see that because it says them in the next sentence, okay, or the next clause. So the man is not gender specific, whereas in verse 27, the distinction and separation are made from the general creation of humanity to the specific creation of the sexes or the gender. So his intention from the beginning was to create man and woman, male and female. So we were not, which is again to be noted, we were not a second thought. We were not an afterthought. Woman was not man. The God didn't make man and then say, oh, yeah, they got a nose, they got a chin, they got eyes. Yep, something's missing. I had to make something else. That's not how it happened. He had from the intention, from the start, the intention of making us. And we see that again when he started talking about humanity, and then he started distinguishing male and female, okay? Any questions so far about that? No? Okay. Anybody have anything to say about that? Yes, ma'am. Amen. Preach! Yes. Okay, so why would he then separate the sexes? Verse 28 offers the beginning of that answer. We have a collective mandate, but a distinct purpose in carrying out the directives of God. Hence, the need to understand gender purposes from the one who gave them. So again, he didn't just separate and say, now what am I going to do? I'm going to walk this out and figure it out as I go along. He had a divine intention from the beginning for the creation of man and woman, and then he distinguished them for a reason. And why? So women shape women in our idea of what a woman is. Correct? We know that, right? Okay. So now this is why you need a pen. We shape the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it comes from collective experiences and impressions made by other women. Agreed? Understood? Okay. How many people were in here were not raised by your biological mother? Anybody raised by grandmama, auntie? No, everybody had a mama that they were raised by. Oh, wonderful. That's not normal. I've never been in a room where there's never been a woman that wasn't raised by a grandmama, auntie, a cousin, somebody. So that's remarkable. The initial impressions that we have about womanhood, and which initially would be who we are made by the primary woman or women in your life, your mother, your aunt, your grandmother. So fill in these as we go. Who shaped you? Was it your mom? Was it your grandmother? Who shaped you about what a woman is? What a woman looks like? What a woman is supposed to be? What a real woman is? Who shaped you? Fill in that blank for me. And in that shaping, as you write that down, who or what was impressed upon you? Who shaped you? So as you all are filling that in, I talk a little bit about in the book, in the initial pages, about how I saw my mother initially. I am very visual, always have been extremely quiet, and to myself, you know how some people are just quiet in public, and then they get home and that was not me. I was quiet everywhere. I was a closet dweller. I sat in the closet all the time, lived in the closet, played by myself in the closet, talked to God in the closet, and would come out when I had to and deal with people. But I watched everything, and I paid attention to everybody. And the first person that I was fascinated with from as long as I can remember was my mother. I thought she was, and she still is, beautiful. My mother has a strong jawline and high cheekbones, and she's chocolatey, and her skin is perfect, and she's just beautiful to me. She had the prettiest hands and long nails and all of those things. Again, I thought she was perfect. And the older I got and the more I learned about her, because as a little girl, you know, we see what we see and we know what we know, which is very little. And I started hearing, because she didn't really talk. My mother's not a big talker either. Hearing different things about her life. My mother got married when she was 15. My father is her second husband. And, you know, all that kind of comes with that. She was wild. My mom was very quiet, very much to herself, very straightforward, proper, but, again, contained. That's not the person that I was hearing that she was prior to me, you know. So I'm like, who is she? Is this a different person, or this is a different life she's living? Was that really her? Is this really her? And I began, at the older I got, to judge her and to decide that who I saw her as wasn't really who she was. And I started seeing her in a different light. And I'll pause there to give you an opportunity to tell me who shaped you. Somebody share. Who shaped you? Good morning. Who shaped you?
My mama and my grandmother.
My mom and auntie.
My mother.
Who shaped you? Your aunts and your mom. Mom and sisters. Mother. Older sister. Grandmother. The mothers of the church. Who shaped you? Mother and grandmother. Ladies, who shaped you? Mom, grandmother, and mother. Who shaped you? Essence and jet covers. Okay. Yeah.
Those covers of the magazines that my mother subscribed to build our self-esteem, and those covers help shape her four daughters.
Mother. Who shaped you?
My mom and my sister Brenda.
Mother and sister. Okay, so all women. We see women shape women. We got that, right? Who is willing to share how they were shaped, good, bad, or indifferent? Okay, I'll share mine. I'll go first. So before I started judging real good, my mother. My mother shaped me. My grandmother, and oddly enough, both of my grandmother. When I say my grandmother, I mean my great grandmother, because both of my grandmothers were deceased. One 3 years before me, before I was born. One 3 months after I was born. So I never got to know them. But I heard so much about them that who they were, in theory, shaped my idea of a woman. And so they were a part of my shaping. My great-grandmother was a part of my shaping because my mother was, again, very quiet and reserved. And what I gleaned from her was not really out of word, but out of deed. The shaping in word that I kind of received was more from listening to the women around me, being my grandmother, my great-grandmother, because she was prissy. She was together all the time. She would say little things that would be like a dart. She would tell me, she'd be polishing her nails. I'm like, well, Grandma, where you going? Oh, I'm going to get the mail. You polishing your nails to get the mail? Somebody might see me, child, and I got to be together. And so things like that, when you hear that, it's like, oh, so presentation makes a difference, even in small places, so I want to make sure that I walk into a space and I'm giving the best of who I am and not just falling in there, So little things like that impressed me. What I also saw that was impressionable, that shaped me and taught me and identified in some spaces with me, was how the women responded to other women. None of the women in my life that impressed upon me had women friends. None of them. None of them. And it was evident that women weren't safe to other women. And so as I got older and, got into school and started, being around other little girls, it was kind of like, I don't know. And so even in those small spaces, we think of the external things, but the impressions that women make on other women are universal. It shapes how we deal with one another, our willingness and our ability to connect. We have to be intentional about being shaped beyond our initial shaping or impression. Anybody want to share yet? No? Okay, no problem. We'll have plenty of time. So the next question is, what is your understanding of womanhood? What is a woman to you? Write that out for me. What is a woman to you? Tell me what you think a woman is. Anybody want to share what they think a woman is? Please. Because I'm not going to tell you. Yes, ma'am. Hold on one second.
A woman to me is she's responsible and she's dedicated.
Anybody else want to share?
Supportive. She's supportive.
Supportive? Yes, ma'am. Nurturing?
And she's chaste.
Okay, so a woman is chaste and she's nurturing. Strong, supportive.
I said all of those things, but I also added a comforter. Yeah, we're a place of comfort.
Place of comfort, very good. Comfort.
Well, I put being mindful, loving, sympathetic, and have empathy. And I had that on because as I was growing up, my mother always showed those things. And if something happened, she always reminded us of maybe somebody else that wasn't that fortunate. And we were poor anyway. You know what I'm saying? How poor can you be? But, that's something that she always, that's something she already shared.
Amen. Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine.
I just think a woman is independent. That's the way I am. Always independent.
Independent. Yes.
That you indicated that she didn't have any, either you didn't have any friends or she wouldn't talk to females.
My mother is very warm and open, but she didn't have any friends. She didn't have any female friends.
I did, because my mother, she made her talk to two ladies, and that's way back, but then she would always say, keep it in-house. I don't know if they felt that the woman was going to tell something sooner or later, if they got mad or whatever, but, you know, she had that privacy about her. But I don't know if that was that generation or what, but I was listening to you say it, so that's my question, if anybody else knows that.
For black people back in those days, they don't share. They don't talk about things. And if you read and study slavery, that's where it comes from. Because I read a book, I was reading a book on slavery, and it was in the 1930s. They were going around doing like the census, but they were running into so many people that had actually been into slavery. And those people were reluctant to talk. And so that has, I think, always been the tradition of black people. We don't talk a lot because of, you know, our ancestors. It goes down through generation. Because my mother, she didn't talk a lot about the family, her family. It was always hush-hush.
What happens here stays in his house. So that is a good spot for this little demonstration. I'm sure y'all like nobody. She got a purse. Don't take my car. Let's see. And then I be needing that. I like these in church. I'm gonna get you two because you seem nice to me. And I keep these just in case I cough a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna keep this with me. So what do you think I did that for?
Your trust. You're sharing what's in your bag.
You're sharing a part of who you are with others.
So I'll give you my stuff. I'll share my stuff. But I ain't giving you me. I give you little pieces. And as I gave them to you, I gave you some instructions. I gave you some commentary. Now to you, you can see a wallet and say, okay, that's valuable. You see a piece of tissue, you're like, what you give me a tissue for? I hope this clean. She ain't do nothing with this. You see my keys, and unless I identify which car is mine, you can do a little something with it if you really want to work with it or not. And the other pieces that come with me, I gave with little pieces of instructions. We'll do that as women, but we are reluctant to give you the whole thing. Now, what I didn't do is I didn't say, this is my purse and all the content in it. I know Roz. I'm learning to trust Roz, and I'm going to share me with Roslyn. We'll piece ourselves out with instructions, with all these boundaries and barriers, and if I had time, I would have put all these chairs around me in layers and told you, get to me. But I got all these barriers and all these, but you got to do a lot of work to even see me. You may see me from a distance and you say, oh, her hair is always cute. Oh, she dresses kind of nice and her makeup looks good on her. But do you see me? Through all of the stuff I make you go through to get to me, can you really see me? And the reason is because I don't know if you can really handle me. So I give you the pieces of me that I think I can trust you with. And then when I check them out later on, how she handle my stuff. I gave her something valuable to me. What does she do with my stuff? We do that a lot. And I had a friend of mine recently. And when I say you're a friend of mine, that means something to me. Had a friend of mine recently, or two friends. One, they used to be clients of mine also. And one came back and said that the other, in a general space, I heard she told me everything that was going on with you. Now, this friend knew what was going on, as well, so it wasn't like it was a secret to her. But she was so offended that this other person would share with a third party who didn't even know me my stuff. And she said, don't tell her nothing else. And it was interesting to me because my thought was, I don't share nothing that can't come back to me no how. Why do we do that? We only give what we're willing to lose. We're not really willing to risk a whole lot because, tell me why. Trust. Because it goes back to how we were trained, how we were raised, how we were groomed, and what we think womanhood is. It's like if I can't afford to lose it, I ain't giving it to you, period, But that kind of speaks back to God's intention, okay? So the question is, and we'll come back to that in a second, who shaped you? Who shaped the primary woman in your life? So the person who imparted what a woman is, who raised her? Where did she come from? Who gave her her values? And that'll help you see her in a different light. That'll help you be able to weed out and to understand, to hone in on, and to have mercy in the spaces that we need to have mercy in. Going back to what I was saying about how I was judging my mother. But it took me to have to go through those paces of judging her. And my mother is a phenomenal person. Going through that to judge her, to be able to, one, see myself. Because it made me say, number one, I didn't know her. And some of that was, because she didn't offer that to me. But it made me lean in to see, why wouldn't she tell me that? Why would that be something that she wouldn't share with me? When I would think, I'm your only daughter and your baby, that would be something you would want me to know. So it made me lean into me and lean into God and say, well, is there something about me that maybe I wouldn't share with someone? Is there something that I need to be conscientious of and that could help somebody else that maybe I wouldn't because of maybe some embarrassment or whatever the case may be? So take a step back and view this woman not as you often do, but look at her objectively, woman to woman. So make her not your mother, make her not your aunt, make her not anybody that you had a close heart-to-heart relationship with, and make her just a woman that you see, that you know. And how would you look at her differently from that perspective? How would you handle her differently? What would you see differently? Again, when I had to do that with my mother, the first thing I thought about was she didn't really have anyone to raise her like that. I mean, she had a mother who had a bunch of kids and didn't have any support, didn't have any help, and she was afraid, all of these other things that came with that. She was insecure. She had all this other stuff. So how could she have given her anything that she could have given me? She gave me the best of what she had out of her own lack. And so that gave me a different perspective. And so when we began to see women in not the spaces of our judgment, that what we didn't do for one another, what I didn't give you, what you didn't give me, how you didn't handle me well, but we can see them through the eyes of truth and then grace, then we can handle one another differently, we'll handle ourselves differently, and then we'll begin to, again, have different levels of relationship with one another, and then, again, how that affects our relationship with God as well. Beyond the role that she played in her life, or the person who raised her life, and yours, who was she? What was her strengths? What was her weaknesses? What was her struggle? So those are the things that you want to look at as you begin to identify that, okay? Anybody have anything they want to say so far? No? Okay. Loud, 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 loud.
I go back to your question as to who influenced you or what influenced you. I think now back to my mom and her sisters, they were very close. They were friends and family. But how we used to have dinner every Sunday as a family, that kind of helped shape me as well. Family was very, very important. So,
Amen. And my mother, like I said, did not have women relationships or friends and things of that nature. But my mother had a lot of sisters and one brother. And although she only had one that she really trusted, and she kept her close, but even in that, she still kind of kept her at arm's length. And all of those things shaped how I saw women and how I felt about women. So begin to kind of pay attention to that and how you either went in stride with the things that you saw or went the opposite way, because we do one or the other. Okay? So with that, we should see them differently, respect them differently, accept them differently, and then love them differently. So you're going to walk through those spaces on your own. So the next question is, what standard do I hold myself and other women to? These ideas of womanhood that we have, do we hold other women to those standards and ourselves? Yes, no? Yes, we do. Rightfully or no? Yes. Rightfully hold them? Yes. Yes. At times? Okay. What we accept makes a difference. What we think and then what we accept makes a difference in kind of how we treat ourselves and how we treat others. Are these standards that we hold ourselves and others to, are they righteous standards? Are they things that God upholds and God promotes? Or are these things that we just took, again, from our community and from our experiences and impressions? Because some of them, again, and some of them are not just things that we were taught and trained. Some of them have been impressed by our experiences. So if you are a person who is a wonderful people person, and I say that because that is not me. If you are a wonderful people person who attracts people and loves being around people and enjoys that kind of thing, and then you get hit upside the head 3-4 times, it changes how you are with people. And so those are the impressions that begin to shape you along the way. If you are, again, I'm a person who I have 2 or 3 really close people around me, and then we see how that kind of goes, and then one might just be dismissed, and then God will send another person, and we'll see how that goes, type of thing. But if you change and you alter, if you're not careful, I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, I think it was, I didn't start dating until I was good and grown. But I liked this young man, and he liked me, and my best friend at the time knew that I liked him and that we were kind of hanging out a little bit, but not dating, because it wasn't like that. And then I found out that she was dating him. And that changed what I told the women in my surroundings. Not because I didn't necessarily trust them, but because I knew I didn't know what to do yet, and I knew I didn't know how to do that yet. I knew she was wrong, but again, as I was walking through those things, I was trying to figure out, well, did I say too much? Is it right to tell your friends that you like somebody? Again, I wasn't dating. Is it right to do this? So again, these impressions along the way shape and temper. So it's not always taught. Sometimes it's learned behavior, and sometimes it's impressions along the way, things that don't work. And then with that and from that, we begin to build up a whole personality and a whole way of being that may or may not be righteous and may or may not be a part of the way God intended for us to be. Because remember, the original part of this was God had an intention, a general intention for his woman, for his women. And some of these things we have to be extremely conscientious. Yes, ma'am. No, go ahead. No, I'm not.
I was just going to say, when you said that, it just brought to my memory trauma. And one thing that a lot of us don't realize is that trauma, even that was a trauma, it does reshape your brain. So when we go through trauma and we have traumatic experiences, our brain changes and creates a reality for us to help us to get over that. And so then that falsehood that we have in that trauma that we've created becomes a reality to us that's not true. And so we really have to work hard at dispelling those traumas and allowing ourselves to heal through that and experience everything that comes with it, so that we really can come to a place of having a better relationship with ourselves, and then the things that happen to us on the exterior portion, so that we can give people grace.
Because without that, we're not able to give people grace, because we stay in that wounded space, and that wounded space keeps us protecting ourselves and protecting our spaces. Amen. Thank you for sharing that. So that actually moves us into the next part. So we know the story. I don't have to go and read it. But we know the story, the part. It's not the story. We know the part in Scripture where after creation, after they are walking and talking with God in the cool of the day, things are great. They make a poor choice, and their poor choice we know as the fall of Adam, where sin enters, and then they cover themselves and they hide. God speaks and says, Adam, where art thou? Not Eve. Adam, where art thou? And in that, yo, I'm over here. This is my interpretation. This is Wendyism, okay? Yo, I'm over here. What you doing with them fig leaves on? You made your whole outfit. We don't do outfits. And if the outfits in the garden, we good. What are we doing? Oh, no. I just took this stuff and I made me this new fit. It's all good. Look, what's up? What do you need? He's like, who told you were naked? He didn't address the other stuff yet. Who told you were naked? And so the naked has nothing to do with the lack of clothing. The naked, who told you were naked, is who told you were incomplete and you needed to be covered. Because prior to that, I was your covering. Prior to that, you had no need for even the thought of that because you were in a space of perpetual safety. So who told you were naked? Thank you. Who told you were naked? So at what point did the thief, did the liar, come into your personal existence? We're not talking about Adam and Eve now, but in your personal existence, and that you identified and accepted the lie of the enemy that said something is wrong, something's not good enough, something's breached, something's broken. And interestingly enough, sometimes women have this I'm not good enough thing, but we also have this I'm too much. I'm too much. And I say that because that was not, my story was not, I didn't have low self-esteem, bless the Lord. What I had, though, was that's the reason why people struggle with me, because I'm too much. I need to calm down. And again, I'm so not that, but I'm too much hair. I'm too much nails. I'm too much makeup. I'm too much quiet. I'm too much seen. I'm too much noticed. And we have to, again, that's another angle of a lie. You are exactly who you were created to be. Period. And so we have to identify the thief and the liar and ask ourselves, who told me I was naked? Who told me all this? At what point did somebody say something or do something or act in a way that made me feel like my hair wasn't good enough? My weight, something was wrong with my weight. Something was wrong with my shape. Something's wrong with my eyes. Something's wrong with the way I walk. Again, I got some joint issues that I've had my whole life. Part of it, this from the hip down, is set incorrectly. I've known it. I've felt it all my life. I've known that it was there. But it wasn't until somebody made a comment at one point in my life, what's wrong with your leg? That all of a sudden it was an issue. Who told you were naked? You wasn't nothing wrong with that leg before. You looked in the mirror every day and noticed that leg wasn't right. But when somebody says something, something is wrong with it. And maybe that's the reason why. ... So what are the things that you have contended with, that you struggled with, that you've identified with, that you've given or made an attachment with, trying to make a lie the truth? And in the process of it, it has shaped and reshaped the identity that God gave you. Who told you were naked? We were women, we were made and brought. We weren't just formed, we were formed from the dust of the ground in that whole humanity piece. But then beyond that, he took some extra steps and some extra time, and you can read that in Genesis 2:20 through 23. Or page 14, whichever, if you have the book, that we were made in the image of God, and then he brought us. Let's read that. Somebody turn to Genesis 2:20. We got a few minutes. And while we're looking for that, do you recognize that you, as a woman or as women, that we are far more complicated than men? We know that. Do you know that that's a gift? I call that the gift of complication. And one of the reasons of that is, if you notice, because, we've made, oh, you're so dramatic. Oh, you do too much. All of these things that people say. You can calm down. You just extra. You just, ooh, you got so much. You do, sit down. That's a gift that God gave us to be able to do all this stuff, even in conversation. You ask the opposite gender, you ask a man a question, he is able to be concise in that answer. You ask us the same question, it takes 4 paragraphs, and we tried our best to be concise in those 4 paragraphs. There's a purpose in that. We talk about that later. But there's a purpose and intention in that. And rather than it being something that makes you feel bad or like, I'm just doing too much. I am extra. No, that's a gift. That's how you're able to wash clothes, take care of a baby, cook dinner, work on your business plan, keep up with what's going on with the kids. You can keep all this stuff in order and keep all these things in the air because our brains work differently because we are far more complicated for a purpose and a cause. And rather than trying to tone it down, lean into it. It's a gift.
Okay, Genesis 2:20. And Adam gave names to all cattle and to the fowl of the air and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an helpmeet for him. Okay. All right. And then the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. And he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed up his flesh and said thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made a woman and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, this is now the bone of my bones, the flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she has taken out of man.
Humanity, the general sense, is man. And then we were made, which means we were built. When you build something, you put your hands to it to build it. You fashion it intentionally. And then we were brought, which means we were employed. So general humanity, general man, was made in the image of God, formed, given dominion. But woman was made and built intentionally by God. That's why we got a little extras. And then we were brought, we were given a job, we were given a purpose, a specific purpose. And so how does that make you think? Think of your gender and yourself, knowing that you were not just created, but that you were made and fashioned by God specifically and intentionally, and then employed by God with all these complicated and complex aspects that men don't have. It's a gift.
This is important for me to say at 62. As a child, I was insecure because I had 3 beautiful sisters, and I was an ugly, ugly duckling with those 3 swans in the house. But the Lord did a transformation a few years later. But now we have God in our lives, and we're perfectly made who we are. Every fingerprint on everybody is different. You are uniquely and wonderfully and fearfully made to be who you are. All that he put in you is for a purpose. Embrace it.
How do you think about yourself now with the understanding? I wasn't just spit out here by my mama and daddy, but God had an intention at the beginning for me. He made me, he fashioned me, he built me.
Amen. Me, myself, I'm one of those people who love to love people, love to help people. And most of my life, I felt like it was a curse. And I find it to be a blessing and a curse sometimes because people take advantage of people who like to help and love, but I still see it as a blessing because it's just me. I can't help it. It just comes out of me. So I know it to be a blessing, and I learned that it wasn't a curse. So.
How do you see yourself any differently? Knowing that you were formed, you have a purpose, you have a job, a specific aspect that God created you for. Now, he didn't just spit you out here, but he had a divine intention. Anybody else? No? You got something to say? No, I don't be quiet. Okay. Okay, we can hear you again.
I just use one word. We have an assignment.
We do. We do. And he has an intention. Thank you. She going to give me back. She going to give me pieces of me. So for those of you all who were late and did not get the opportunity, I shared earlier the things that were in my purse. And it was an opportunity for us to see by demonstration how we are more likely to give pieces of ourselves in spaces rather than really giving ourselves to the spaces and the people that we're in front of. So how are you currently employed in your life? And do you see it as a blessing and a burden? You already shared. So again, because we, again, have employment, we all, and I don't mean a job in the secular sense, but we all have a purpose, and we are a gift to the world that God has given and continues to give. We'll get deeper into the specifics of that in the weeks to come. But do you see that as a blessing, or do you see it as a burden? Because there are a lot of times when because we are so complicated and so duplicitous in so many different facets of our being, that we feel overworked, underappreciated, burdened. It's like, this is too much. But if you think about it and you really look at it and the truth of what it is, you were designed for it, and God uses that to kind of push some of the things that are in us out of us, and that allows the truth of who we were created to be to really be in the spaces of the earth. So is it a burden to you, or do you recognize it as a blessing?
For the past year, I've been taken care of first at the beginning of the year as my grandmother until she passed in January. So for that was the end of last year until this year. And then this last month, I've been taking care of my aunt. And she's actually my dad's aunt, so she's my great aunt. I've been taking care of her for the last month, for her last month of life, to make her transition at home so we didn't have to put her into a facility. She was able to be cared for in her home and do what she wanted to do in her home and be comfortable in her home. So that's my employment, is to go to my elders and do what they need me to, take care of them when they need me to. So that's my employment. Do I think I thought it was a burden because I was away from my children for the last month, but I have my mother and mother-in-law stepped in while I stepped away. So yes, so kind of
A little bit of both.
It was a blessing to my aunt. It was a blessing to my aunt. I was a blessing to my aunt. However, I felt like my children missed me, so that's why I felt like it was a curse.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, very quickly? Blessing or burden? Okay, it's how you see it. It's how you choose to see it. So again, if we allow ourselves to see it in the truth of where we are and what God is using and drawing out of us, it will be a blessing to us. And he'll remove the burden from us, because what it does is not only does it bring out the best of us, but it demands that we seek him. It demands that we draw our strength from him. It demands that we get all that we need, not just simply from ourselves, because then it will stress and burden us. But then it draws us closer to him, to see him in the truth of who he is, and it draws us closer. Yes, ma'am.
I took care of my mom till she was 94, and she had other children that she could have gone to when she stopped housekeeping. So the same happened to this one here. She's the youngest of the family, so she chose to take care of me. So it just goes on down the line. You get your blessing.
Amen. So we also know that as the valuable people that God has created us to be as women, I want to read it from the book because it was already said well. I don't want to try to recreate what God already said. On page, if you have the book, it is page 18. And I'll read right after the Genesis 1:31 part. And it says, the man, Adam, co-signed, saying, at last, this is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She is to be called woman because she was taken out of man. This is why a man is to leave his father and mother and to stick to his wife. It was Satan's lie received and accepted that caused distraction to come, bringing separation, fragment, and chaos. The same is true now. Liken woman to Mona Lisa, the painting, the Mona Lisa. Some look at this fine, priceless work of art and declare it unappealing. If you think about it, It's not a beautiful painting from an untrained eye. For whatever reason, unseasoned, ignorant, or merely not suiting to our individual taste, it is personally deduced, can be deduced as being valueless. If allowed, some would alter it, giving it more color or completely painting over it as a whole. This would not only distort its original design, but alter its value. This is what the enemy's lie will do when accepted. It paints on an already perfect picture and devalues what God has declared is already good. It is only his assessment, God's assessment, that is pure and true. So that's what the lie of the enemy does. It takes and allows outside external things to determine what God has already assessed and assigned value to, already said is the way he wanted it to be, and continues to be his. And so he's the author of it. He's the originator of us. And so he's already assigned value to us. We don't need value assessed by anything or anybody else other than the originator. And so in that, it also says, if you move on, it talks about, so for all that was hand-finished with great intentionality and birthed into the earth, there is no wonder why such magnificence would be so highly sought by a thief. So since we are priceless to God, highly valued, and already assessed as being good and priceless and rare because we're one of a kind by God, of course the thief and the liar, his intention is to try to come and steal, kill, and destroy, whereas Jesus is our liberator. The enemy is the destroyer. So when we lean into the lie of the enemy, it destroys our self-esteem. It destroys the intention of the enemy for who we are and our value in the earth. It takes the good that God has assigned as being a part of not just our humanity, because remember that's the initial thing, but our gender-specific, God's gender-specific intention for woman. It takes and it kills that, it steals, it destroys. If you look at what woman is now in media and what woman is now in mainstream, that is not God's intention of woman. It's not real. It's distorted. We got all this plastic, all this plumped up this. And, if you don't have 36, 24, 45, because now hips and behinds are in, then something is wrong with you. That's not the intention of God. That's not the intention of God. First of all, for us to be assessed by our physicality, that give it time and all that is going to shift and change and sag and wrinkle and all kinds of other things. So it better be something internal that you have to match what's coming out of you and what is being viewed and witnessed. But when he looks at you, he's already said good. He's already said good. He looks at your heart and he knows. He knows what's in there. But he sees it through the eyes of his son. And he says, good. And so as we continue to move forward, I put the rest of the